Mr. Magdin, we speak just a few days after the elections in Saxony and Thuringia, where the tendency of the collapse of the center in politics in Germany continued, and we also saw how the European elections, in a way, also demonstrated that in France and Germany. If this collapse of the center or strategic weakness of the center right now in European Union is true, what conclusions should be drawn, and how should Bulgaria and Romania as societies, as allies, answer?
One of the soundbites used for countries who have joined initially the EU was that they lived initially, not happily ever after, but they lived what the French would call les 30 glorieuses, the 30 glorious. Indeed, after starting the European project, the initiating countries noticed that there were up to 3 decades of almost headache-free continued growth, right? We are heading there as Romania, Bulgaria as well. And we have to understand that periodically we need to reinvent ourselves in terms of, let's say, economic strategy, and not only. I start with the economic argument because at the end of the day, this dissatisfaction to mainstream, not just center, but mainstream pitches to the right, to the left, to the center, is also dissatisfaction with living conditions. Unfortunately, Western Europe from this perspective and Eastern Europe are decoupled in terms of historic cycle, whereas sometimes in Western Europe you hear talk of decline. It's clearly not the case in Eastern Europe, because we feel that ever since we joined the EU we have a feeling of rising, not only in terms of economic standards, but also on GDP, but also more widely we have the feeling that we have flourished. Some frustrations may rise in part of our population for the fact that themselves as specific categories they may not have flourished in parallel with the numbers of the country. So we did not always see a translation of national economic growth into one's pockets and welfare. But nonetheless, Eastern Europe feels good and feels like still growing, together with the wider global trend of moving, let's say, the global axis more towards the east. And when I say towards the east, I don't necessarily mean Russia, I mean the Asian century, right? And the growth dynamics of Asia, right? So from this perspective, it's normal when you accumulate, particularly in Western Europe, in part of, let's say, the regions or in part of the social categories, you already have at least a decade long, if not longer, frustrations. Because when did the harm really begin in Western Europe? The harm really began in Western Europe after the 2008 economic crisis. And the truth is, we have gone from this perspective of a population who has stabilized and thought they're going to live well in the 90s and early 2000s. Suddenly, a lot of the people who were prosperous before and had some mini economic recession cycles, perhaps in the 80s or early 90s, they were faced with a cascade of crises out of which they did not truly recover. I mean, the Eurozone crisis, and the global financial crisis. Then, honestly, all of us were affected by COVID, and the ensuing economic strife. Then Ukraine, the war, Russia's war on Ukraine, with energy crisis, inflation rising, and so on. So it's a mismatch between West and East. The West is living worse than they thought they would be living, and for sure, perhaps worse than in the past. So it's normal that in some of the counties, part of the message is linked to nostalgia, right? Or part of the messaging linked to unmet expectations go forward. I wouldn't be that pessimistic in the case of Germany. I think we could be more pessimistic in the case of France. I think the dangers France is facing are, although the French state and some of the French top politicians are trying to do what we call containment of the populist wave, I nonetheless fear more for France than for Germany. What I mean, the structure of Germany, the federal structure of Germany makes that, yes, indeed, we have seen Saxony and Thuringia for being awarded to AfD, but at the same time, you will still see CDU very strong in North Rhine-Westphalia. You will still see SPD pretty strong in some of their counties where they still wear a star, right? The Greens are still there, right? On the mainstream side and on the Apfel coalition in Germany, only the FDP is not necessarily feeling good, the liberals, right? Because they have their doubts for future elections in case they can make it in parliament. But so I wouldn't worry that much for Germany, because Germany is kind of split in terms of, in a way, like the EU, but reverse geography. Western Germany still delivers a lot in terms of the economic prosperity, whereas Eastern Europe has accumulated economic frustrations and welfare frustrations as regards the West. It's reversed like what we see in Eastern Europe, where Eastern Europe is still superior in growth to Western Europe, and it's a very dynamic way. So overall, I'm not a fan of doom and gloom. I think we're still okay, but this also in a way creates a leadership opportunity for us in Eastern Europe, and opportunities for bilateral ventures, like the Baltics, they work together, perhaps Romania and Bulgaria, whether bilaterally or trilaterally together with Greece. Speaking of our formats in the region, we can step forward, be more proactive in terms of European thought leadership, be more proactive in terms of strategic initiatives, because, surprise, while Berlin and Paris may be busy with their own stuff, there may be an opportunity for constructive ideas which can be adopted by the wider club who are originating in Sofia, in Bucharest, or in both capitals.
Okay, I would continue that issue which you opened, because if we look geopolitically, it's been discussed already that France and Germany have some greater turbulence in their politics, but Politico and other media keep on writing that the center of gravity or power in Europe is moving to the east, with Poland very much on the rise, and also Ukraine and Moldova even coming closer to Europe, and a lot of infrastructural projects being implemented, for example, in the Three Seas Initiative region. So could you comment a little bit more on this, both potential and concrete things which could be done so that this region which you mentioned, which can offer an alternative for its own dynamics and contribution to the European Union, really do it?
If you're looking just at the combined population of Poland, Ukraine, and here I count also the population, the Ukrainian diaspora, with the potential to come back after the war to Ukraine, and you combine this with Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria, you realize that you have on your table around 110 million people, which is beyond the German population. So only these, let's say, 4 countries, if they come together and do more projects in the future, you have a collective market which is pretty good. If you just combine the EU members, Poland, Bulgaria, and Romania, you're ending up at around 80 million, at around 70 million people, right? So it's still important. It's still a country like beyond the population of France, right? So from this perspective, I'm optimistic, that regional cooperation projects and ideas will be in a way mutually reinforcing in case we are synchronized, and it doesn't become a matter of ego, right? And so on. So I think if it's from the very beginning designed, of course somebody has to do the draft, right? Whether it's Sofia, Bucharest, or Warsaw, right? But if it's well treated from a person-to-person level and a statecraft perspective, I think we can be mutually supportive, and we can be, having taken the lead together on Eastern European issues. I mean, at least in between Romania and Poland, clearly we are also encouraged by our American allies to do more things. If you're looking at Ukraine, for sure, here is also where Britain comes in. United Kingdom, who tries to look at the different security and other formats. I would say that for the moment, Poland is well positioned as regards its connections with the Baltics, but is having a problem with the Visegrad format because of its current status of relations with Hungary and Slovakia, whereas the functional member from a Polish perspective in the Visegrad is the Czech Republic, Czechia. The good news is that I think both Romania and Bulgaria are mapped by, generally in Europe, as two very constructive countries, right? And it's always good to be constructive, and it's always good to be constructive, and it's always important, to have that your partners have the feeling that you are an open interlocutor. And I think this is an added value for Romania and Bulgaria in the future. I wouldn't necessarily count too much beyond the geopolitics, the economics of Moldova and Ukraine. When I say this, as an optimist, even as an optimist, I'm aware of the challenges ahead for Moldova and Ukraine. Ironically, for Moldova, although it's perhaps geostrategically less important for Europe than Ukraine, because it's of a smaller magnitude and of a smaller size, and there is lots of a talk about how much EU money we have to offer Moldova. Ironically, Moldova, if it keeps on its EU track and progresses on negotiation chapters, will enter the EU, perhaps even before some Western Balkan countries, in case they stall progress, and for sure before Ukraine, because Ukraine has both an advantage and disadvantage in its size. It has the geopolitical and geoeconomic advantage in its size, but at the same time, it's an easy pitch for Ukraine's opponents in the EU club, because, like Romania and Bulgaria witnessed during their own EU accession, we don't only have friends in the EU arena. I think they will be confronted with conditions which we were confronted with in terms of privatizations, or in terms of other additional criteria to be met in order to make sure that the gates of Brussels are open. Whether we're talking about CVMs, right, cooperation verification mechanism, or any kind of other mechanism. So, for the moment, I would say Europe has a lot on its plate. Security is clearly an issue. I think if we were to put one word where Eastern Europe and Brussels is aligned, and this also connects with the wider Brussels agenda specifically this week, it's competitiveness. Speaking also of the Draghi report, because Eastern Europe is naturally competitive. We have to learn more in terms of innovation, but we have been more competitive. This is why we have managed to grow. And I would dare say also competitiveness is, for geopolitical purposes and great power competition agenda, a massive hot potato also for Brussels. Because if Eastern Europe has to become, I would say, more innovative and go further up on the let's say productivity scale, then reinvent its economic model. Western Europe as well has to reinvent its economic model, because what functioned before, will not function any longer. So all of this are on the common agenda. Yes, the trend is moving eastward, but this is where we have to also jump at the opportunities, because geographically speaking, if you're looking also at analysis of different empires in the past and so on, opportunities tend to go to the center of the empire, right? And if you're looking at the EU as a wider economic empire, just from, I don't say this in an imperialistic Russian propaganda sense, but simply in terms of, let's say, mechanics of the club, Brussels and Germany are well positioned to be at the center, where the opportunity are and move over there, right? So yes, trend is moving eastward, but it depends on Romania and Bulgaria. How do we create opportunity for us in the future? Because otherwise, the big engine will still remain around Germany and around Brussels.
Okay, I would also be very happy if this vision for transformation of the EU and the region takes place. But I'm also aware of very strong nationalist egoisms in the periphery of the EU, And you are probably aware that in our region, the wider region, even with Poland and Visegrad 4, every country seems to be looking at a different, bigger brother for support, like Poland to the USA, Hungary maybe to Russia, and Romania maybe to Western Europe. Bulgaria has a special relation with Turkey, which is often underestimated. So I want to ask you, okay, let's believe that Romania and Bulgaria have potential to do things together. Who is the agent of change in these relations? Because from my own feeling, there is a big issue related with trust. Basically, you don't have a lot of Bulgarians who are open and sincere and engaged in their attitude and curiosity towards Romanians and vice versa. And it also takes time, even if you have them. But they're not. There are very few. These people who can be bridges are very few, I believe. So, who is the agent of change?
I think that for the moment, Romania is very busy with its electoral agenda, which unfortunately keeps also Bulgaria busy in the past few years. But leaving that aside, if we have clarity on in Bulgaria, let's see if we have that clarity after this autumn's elections, then for sure we will have clarity on Romania starting Q1 with the new government, a new president. For sure, things will be revamped. And I think Bucharest will be very interested in coordination with foreign partners, particularly the Americans as the main security partner and Germany as the main economic partner, to make sure that we create a wider regional, let's say, potential for growth. Because a lot of the energy of the Romanian government this year has been on the preparation of the electoral year, and it's normal in all countries around us. It's normal in all big democracies as well. So we didn't have a lot of time for statecraft or for regional leadership. What helps Romania is its size and the fact that we have 19 million people plus a 4 million people diaspora. At the same time, Romania is in a very interesting decade in which we're moving from a follower position to a periodic, I wouldn't necessarily say reluctant leader, but like the term we use sometimes for Germany, but I would dare say from time to time taking the initiative because we spot the opportunity. My hopes as regards, and I think it's a realistic hope as regards the new president and new government of Romania, is that we will have to kick off next year a very ambitious agenda, because we are forced to do this by two deficits: a trade deficit, which we have and it's consolidating, and a budget deficit. So we're forced by the economics of Romania's development. If we want to maintain our population happy, and if we want to maintain, enough resources, for a turbulent, region, because we still don't have a clear end of the war in between Russia and Ukraine, right? And we have other challenges in the region, so we're going to be forced to revamp quickly a regional agenda in coordination with Sofia, perhaps also with Athens, speaking of bilaterals or trilaterals, and for sure in an ambitious Brussels agenda, a constructive nonetheless Brussels agenda. And it's not just an issue of being forced to be constructive because you have a deficit. I think that both Romania and Bulgaria have the advantage that we are historically mapped as two very pro-European and constructive countries. And this is what Brussels needs. And this, I think, also where we ourselves we need from Brussels a high element of constructiveness, and I wouldn't necessarily say a laissez-faire, laissez-passer as regards our two countries, but nonetheless flexibility from Brussels on our own agenda. So it's like a prize for being a good kid. What would be the exact initiatives, how fast, it depends also on the personality, at least for Bucharest, of the Romanian president, of the next Romanian Prime Minister. But I think no matter who comes to power, and the format, exact power format of the new coalition, I think we're being forced by economic realities to take faster decisions. So I trust that 2025 will be a very ambitious year in Romania. How it will be in Bulgaria, I think it depends a lot on the new structure of the government after the elections, on the different power poles and so on. But for sure there is an open door between the two countries. Also because we have this strategic, again, history puts us as natural allies for a topic. We were natural allies for NATO accession, we were natural allies for EU accession, and for CVM related purposes, and now we're natural allies to the finalization of Schengen. So I think that Schengen is also another file where we are bound together to push in the next few weeks, months, and the latest next year to finalize also the terrestrial component of Schengen.
Speaking about the terrestrial component of Schengen, you are aware that Austria was opposed to, had some reserves to the membership of Bulgaria and Romania. Finally, there was an agreement which, however, also included strengthening of border control between Bulgaria and Romania. On the other hand, there is this proposal which is supported by the influential Romanian politician Dacian Cioloș on elimination of border controls, land border controls between Greece, Bulgaria and Romania. So, is it right to say that these are two conflicting visions for our region?
First of all, I think that our politicians need to align from time to time in terms of to understand better when we all synchronize on strategies or tactics. Because, for example, on the latest episode on Schengen, last time we had a victory, there was even in Romania a separation of the tribes, and I was supportive of the tribe who was more audacious rather than protecting the status quo. What do I mean by this? One of the tribes in Romanian politics said we should maintain dialogue with the Austrians. They're the second largest investor in Romania. We should be nice to them and try to be nice boys, nice guys, nice girls with them, and they're going to appreciate that we're so nice, right? And I think this was also the main embrace as regards the Dutch, but also with the Austrians in the past in Bulgaria, right? I embraced the second tribe, which was, I would say, mostly centered around Prime Minister Ciolacu and the Social Democrats, namely that we should be not necessarily more aggressive, but for sure more assertive as regards the Austrians. And I think we should be starting to send as Romania and Bulgaria, because it's already been 17 years in the EU, we should be sending some power signals as well. Because you don't have to be Mr. or Mrs. Perfect to be able to do power plays in the EU either. There are other countries who from time to time, even in context of national vulnerability block processes in the EU, to send to their colleagues in the EU the idea that we should be mindful of the interest that the countries have as well, right? So I'm in favor of a pro-European Romania and a pro-European Bulgaria, but I think that the two governments should be aware, and leadership of the two countries should be aware of the fact that the EU is not just a happy-clappy club, but it's also a power club. And in this power club, from time to time, it's important to send signals of power. So in case with the new changes in Vienna, we believe that we can engage in a nice way with the new government, with the FPO, and who for sure will be a senior partner in government, if not even given the chancellor. That's great. In case we can negotiate stuff, in case we can't negotiate stuff, I'm in favor of a Romanian position, and I hope it will be embraced by the new president of Romania, because for sure it wasn't embraced by the current president or the new prime minister, in which our Austrian friends understand that they make good money in Romania as the second largest investor, and they should themselves be interested in Romania's future and in Bulgaria's future. And they should be constructive as regards our Schengen ambition. Yes, we can talk technicalities, we can talk extra measures, but not in a forceful way as regards Romania and Bulgaria, and in a pushy and a blackmailing way towards our two countries, but in a sense that, yes, these two countries really need to move forward. I'm not sure Mr. Cioloș, who I respect as a wider European player and national player, will have political traction for this proposal. I'm not sure the leadership of the two countries can get aligned on such an idea. It's an interesting idea from my perspective, and it's also in a way a power play, right? In case you go forward. But I think the instinct in Bucharest will not be, no matter who is in office, to move forward on such a bilateral or trilateral issue, it will be mostly to make sure that we go beyond any Austrian veto and we secure the victory per se, right? So again, we should be more forceful, nice, continue to be nice, but be forceful in case the others push the limit towards us.
I have two more questions, if possible. First, regarding again Bulgaria and Romania. For me, a problem in the peripheral zones is trust. They're peripheral because there is not sufficient trust, and they don't have sufficient trust because they're peripheral. How could that be changed, not only on the level of states, but with other players or subjects?
I think we should do more, let's say, bilateral. And I mean bilateral, not, as you mentioned, administrative, political, but we should be doing more bilateral dating in terms of our intelligentsia, in terms of our perhaps also developing regional projects together, at the Black Sea, at the Western Balkans level, at the Eastern Partnership level, right? Because we are complementary. Separate from that, I think we should be talking more in between our employers' organizations and our business community, because this way we have an ecosystem approach to the bilateral relationship, and we don't depend on the whims or the faction or the grand du jour, the big guys, who for the moment run the show in terms of politics or administration. We create the environment who pushes for a more important bilateral agenda. And in terms of escaping peripheries, this is one of my pet projects. And I have a project called the Global Romanian idea, where I anchor the idea of Romanian ambition. And I think we should anchor more and more, not only regional, but pan-European and global ambitions for Romania and Bulgaria. Of course, this should be matched by resources, but even like this, how do you get respected by being present in the leadership, thought leadership? From this perspective, I think that Bulgaria has a great advantage by having one of the largest, one of the smartest European intellectuals, Mr. Krastev. He's not always very positive about the region, right? Because he sometimes talks about democratic decline, right? Which is a reality in some of the countries. Me, I'm more of a positive guy because I come more from the ambient of business. But I mean, he has his big share of thought leadership. And I think with this kind of people, right, from business, from politics, from wider intelligentsia, we can not only be more respected, but we can also create the let's say the intellectual ecosystem which allows us to foster regional, bilateral and pan-European advancement.
Okay, and finally, Romania has presidential parliamentary elections in November and December. What are your expectations from their results, the winners, and not only in terms of people, but what will win? What tendency or politics or vector will prevail?
Well, we no longer, periodically in Romania, we try to exaggerate drama to make sure we mobilize voters. But honestly speaking, Romania is in no way in any kind of danger to change any kind of vectors. Most of the Romanian political class, with the exception perhaps of AUR and SOS, namely the non-mainstream parties, ultra-conservative/extremist, with this exception, the vast majority of the political class, and here we count almost 75-80%, so 3/4, 4/5 of the Romanian political class, and remains engaged in the country's European and Euro-Atlantic aspiration. I wish we wouldn't be that provincial, and we would be talking more about, not necessarily about being constructive, but more about being ambitious at the Euro-Atlantic and at European level. In terms of expectations, I expect either for Mr. Ciucă or Mr. Ciolacu to be the next president of the country, because I think at the end of the day, party discipline beyond personality will decide who enters the second round. And I expect a continuation of the current coalition PSD-PNL, simply because the current coalition will score, in my view, close to 50%, and it's very hard to find other combinations which match 50% of the electorate, thereby securing a majority.